Jesus Christ died at the age of 33. For centuries, that number has carried a weight no human mind can fully grasp. It marks the moment when divine love met human cruelty and chose the cross. But what if I told you that one saint was shown she would die at the same age? Not as a coincidence, not as a poetic parallel, but as a revelation that shook her soul to the core. Saint Faustina Kowalska, a poor, uneducated nun hidden from the eyes of the world, was not only shown that her life would be short, she was given a terrifying understanding of why. This was not about predicting death, it was about divine timing. Because when God reveals something so grave, it is never to satisfy curiosity. It is to prepare a soul for suffering, obedience, and a mission that would outlive her own breath. Faustina did not rejoice when she understood the meaning behind that number. She trembled. Throughout her life, Jesus entrusted her with secrets that many saints feared to receive, visions of mercy and judgment, of souls lost and souls saved, of suffering accepted in silence and grace poured out through pain. She learned that some souls are chosen not to live long, but to burn intensely. That some lives are hidden on purpose, so that God alone may be glorified. And that suffering, when united to Christ, is never wasted. Tonight, we are not here to sensationalize a saint's death. We are here to uncover the truth behind a mystery that still echoes through heaven and earth. Why would God allow a soul to glimpse the length of her life? Why would that length mirror the earthly years of his own Son? And what does that reveal, not just about Faustina, but about us? Before we continue, I want to offer a quiet blessing to you. May everyone watching this video be held in peace and rest safely within the love of God, no matter what burdens you carry, no matter what questions fill your heart. You are not here by accident, and you are not forgotten. And I would love to know something personal from you. Which country are you watching this video from? Please write it in the comments. Your presence here matters more than you realize, and your comment may remind someone else that they are not alone. Now, let us begin where her story truly starts, not with visions, not with revelations, but with a hidden life that heaven had already chosen.
Before Saint Faustina ever saw a vision, before her name was written in books, before the world would one day call her the Apostle of Divine Mercy, she was invisible. Faustina Kowalska was born into poverty in a small Polish village, far removed from centers of learning, influence, or religious prestige. Her family was poor, her education minimal, her future seemingly ordinary. In the eyes of the world, there was nothing remarkable about her, and that was precisely the point. She did not grow up studying theology. She did not possess eloquence or authority. She had no title, no platform, no power. What she had were calloused hands. As a young girl, Faustina worked as a servant, performing exhausting physical labor, cleaning floors, cooking meals, caring for others while remaining unseen herself. Her days were long, repetitive, and unnoticed. There were no audiences, no applause, only silence. And yet, within that silence, something extraordinary was taking place. From an early age, Faustina carried a strange and persistent sense that she did not belong entirely to this world. Even as a child, she felt drawn inward toward prayer, solitude, and a presence she could not yet name. While others dreamed of comfort or recognition, her heart was restless for something unseen. It was not ambition that stirred her soul, it was longing, a longing for God. She felt it while working, she felt it while kneeling alone, she felt it even when she was exhausted beyond words. This interior life, invisible to everyone around her, became the place where heaven quietly prepared her. When Faustina entered religious life, nothing changed on the surface.
She was not assigned prestigious tasks. She did not become a leader or teacher. She continued to scrub floors, tend gardens, and perform the most humble duties within the convent. Many sisters barely noticed her. Some misunderstood her silence as weakness. Others mistook her obedience for insignificance. But God was watching. Throughout Scripture and history, God has always chosen the small, not because they are strong, but because they are empty enough to be filled. David was a shepherd, Mary was a village girl, and Faustina was a servant. Her lack of education meant she relied entirely on God. Her lack of influence meant no glory could be claimed as her own. Her obscurity ensured that what would later unfold could only be attributed to divine grace. Faustina's life teaches us a truth the world resists. God does not look for visibility, He looks for availability. While the world seeks greatness through recognition, God builds His plans in hiddenness. While society measures worth by success, heaven measures worth by surrender. And Faustina surrendered everything. She obeyed without knowing why. She served without being seen. She trusted without understanding. Long before she was entrusted with revelations about mercy, suffering, and divine timing, she proved faithful in the smallest things. This hidden life was not a delay, it was preparation. Because before God reveals His secrets to a soul, He first teaches that soul how to disappear. And it was in this quiet disappearance, unknown, unnoticed, and seemingly insignificant, that Saint Faustina was chosen for a mission that would one day echo across the world. But the calling she would receive next would test her in ways her hidden life had only begun to prepare her for.
The first time Jesus appeared to Faustina, it did not feel like a blessing. There was no choir of angels, no flood of light, no sweetness that overwhelmed the senses. What she encountered instead was gravity. Jesus stood before her not as a distant figure of comfort, but as a living presence that demanded her full attention. His gaze was steady, penetrating, not condemning, but impossible to escape. It was the kind of presence that leaves a soul exposed, stripped of every illusion. Faustina did not feel worthy to look at him. She felt small, unclean, terrified. The words Jesus spoke were not gentle encouragements, they were commands, simple, direct, unavoidable. He asked of her things she did not believe herself capable of carrying. He spoke of obedience, of trust, of surrender beyond understanding. And with each word, Faustina became more aware of her own weakness. This was not the Jesus she had imagined. She had expected consolation. She had expected reassurance. Instead, she was confronted with responsibility, and that frightened her more than any vision of suffering could. Almost immediately, doubt flooded her mind. Am I deceived? Is this truly from God or from my own imagination? Faustina was painfully aware of her lack of education, her fragile health, her emotional sensitivity. She knew how easily a soul could be misled, and the last thing she wanted was to offend God by believing something false. Fear became her constant companion. She feared disobedience. She feared deception. She feared being exposed as delusional. And yet, the presence returned, not daily, not predictably, but often enough to prevent her from dismissing it. Each encounter left her shaken, not uplifted, not comforted, shaken. Jesus did not explain everything at once. He revealed only what was necessary, and often only after she resisted. His manner remained serious, deliberate. He spoke with the authority of one who expects to be obeyed, not negotiated with. This deepened Faustina's inner conflict. Why me?
she asked in anguish. Why choose someone so weak, so unprepared, so insignificant? She begged God to remove the burden from her. She prayed that if the visions were not from Him, they would cease. She even hoped at times that they would disappear, not because she doubted God's power, but because she doubted her own ability to respond faithfully. The terror was not rooted in what she saw. It was rooted in what she feared she might fail to do. Faustina understood something many do not. True encounters with God are not always consoling. They are often unsettling. Because God does not come merely to soothe, He comes to transform. And transformation begins with the destruction of false security. In the silence that followed each vision, Faustina examined herself relentlessly. She sought guidance from confessors, submitted her experiences to spiritual authority, and accepted correction without defense. She did not cling to the visions as proof of holiness. In fact, she wished they would be taken from her. But heaven was persistent. The more she doubted herself, the more clearly one truth emerged. This was not about her ability, it was about her obedience. God was not asking her to understand, He was asking her to trust. And trust, for a soul like Faustina, was terrifying. Because trust meant surrendering control. It meant walking forward without clarity. It meant allowing God to act through weakness. The first visions did not elevate her, they humbled her. They taught her that being chosen does not feel like honor, it feels like exposure. And as these encounters continued, Faustina began to realize that what lay ahead would not bring recognition or peace, but suffering. A suffering she had yet not seen, and a path she had yet not dared to imagine.
When Jesus returned to Faustina, He did not soften His message. He did not promise peace as the world understands it. He did not offer protection from pain. He did not remove fear. Instead, He revealed the cost. You will share my suffering. These words did not come as a metaphor. They were not symbolic. They were a calling and a warning. Faustina began to understand that her hidden life had not been a shield, but a preparation. The silence she had lived in, the obedience she had practiced, the humility she had learned, all of it was forming her for a path that would wound both body and soul. She was shown not in detail, but with unmistakable clarity what lay ahead. Illness, a slow weakening of the body, pain that would return day after day, a strength that would fade while the demands of obedience remained. Loneliness, not the absence of people, but the absence of understanding, the quiet realization that what she carried inside could not be shared freely, the isolation of being chosen for something no one else could see. Misunderstanding, from those she trusted, from those in authority, from those who believed they were protecting her while doubting the truth of her experiences. Jesus did not hide these things from her. He showed her just enough to remove any illusion that the path would be gentle. And then He did something even more difficult. He compared her suffering to His own, not to elevate her, not to glorify pain, but to teach her the nature of redemptive suffering. He reminded her that He too had been misunderstood, that His words had been twisted, that His mission had been questioned. He had healed and was accused of deception. He had spoken truth and was called dangerous. He had loved and was rejected. Faustina recognized the pattern. God's work is rarely accepted without resistance. His messengers are often doubted before they are believed. This realization did not comfort her, it crushed her, because she knew she was not strong like the saints she admired. She had no desire to be tested, no longing to suffer, no confidence in her endurance.
She wanted to disappear. Yet Jesus did not withdraw the invitation. He did not say, "If you wish." He said, "If you trust me." Suffering, he showed her, was not a punishment. It was a participation. To share in his suffering meant to share in his mission, the mission of mercy. But mercy, she would learn, is born from sacrifice. The world seeks peace without cost. God offers peace through the cross. Faustina was not promised relief. She was promised presence. A presence that would remain even when the body weakened, even when the soul felt abandoned, even when obedience seemed unbearable. This chapter of her life was not yet the climax, it was the threshold. The suffering revealed to her was not the final message, it was the preparation for something far greater, something heavier, something that would require every ounce of surrender she possessed. Because before God entrusts a soul with his deepest secrets, he first allows that soul to taste the cross. And Faustina, trembling and unsure, was being led step by step toward a revelation that would change not only her life, but the destiny of countless souls.
God did not show Faustina a date. There was no calendar opened before her, no voice declaring a year or a day, no number written in stone. What she was given was something far more unsettling, a sense of time collapsing. It came not as information, but as awareness, a deep, unmistakable knowing that her life would not stretch far into the future, that the road ahead was short, measured, already complete in the mind of God. This understanding did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded slowly, like a shadow growing longer as the sun begins to set. Faustina felt it in prayer. She felt it in her body. She felt it in the urgency that began to shape her days. Time no longer felt abundant. Moments carried weight. Delays felt dangerous. Obedience could not be postponed. And within this interior vision of time, a number began to take form, not as a calculation, but as a resonance. 33. It was not spoken aloud. It was not explained. It simply was. Faustina recognized it instantly, not because it belonged to her, but because it belonged to him, Jesus Christ. The age at which divine mercy was poured out through suffering, the age at which salvation was sealed through sacrifice, the age at which love accepted death. The realization did not comfort her, it terrified her, because this was not a comparison she desired, and it was not a parallel she felt worthy to bear. She understood immediately that God was not suggesting equality, he was revealing participation. Her life, like his, would be brief and consumed by purpose. She would not grow old in quiet reflection. She would not fade gently into obscurity. Her years would be concentrated, compressed, burned like incense, quickly, intensely, completely. And like Christ, her path would be marked by suffering. Illness would weaken her body. Misunderstanding would wound her spirit. Obedience would cost her every illusion of control. Faustina did not rejoice in this knowledge. She trembled, because knowing that one's life is short does not bring peace, it brings responsibility. Every moment suddenly demands an answer. Every hesitation feels like disobedience. Every act of love carries eternal consequence. She saw clearly that this knowledge was not given to prepare her for death, but to prepare her how to live. There would be no time to waste, no room for half-surrender, no comfort in delay. The comparison with Christ deepened her fear. Jesus had been misunderstood, so would she be. Jesus had been doubted, so would she be.
Jesus had carried a mission few understood and paid for it with his life. Faustina knew she was not strong enough for this path on her own. She did not possess the courage of martyrs or the confidence of great saints. Her health was fragile, her spirit sensitive, her heart easily wounded. And yet, God was asking her to walk a road shaped by the same divine logic, not because she was capable, but because she was willing. The number 33 became a silent companion, not something she spoke of, not something she explained, but something she carried. It did not fill her with pride, it stripped her of it, because if her life was to mirror Christ's in length, it must also mirror his in surrender, and surrender is never painless. From that moment on, Faustina lived with a heightened awareness of eternity. Each prayer mattered, each sacrifice counted, each moment of suffering was no longer random, it was meaningful. But meaning did not remove fear. If anything, it intensified it. Because to know that one's life is short and chosen is to live beneath the weight of divine purpose. Faustina did not ask for this knowledge, but once it was given, it could not be undone. And as she carried this silent revelation within her soul, she did not yet realize that this was only the beginning. For the closer she drew to the end of her time, the more heaven would ask of her, and the secrets still to be revealed would demand everything she had left.
God did not reveal the shortness of Faustina's life to satisfy curiosity. He was not offering her forbidden knowledge. He was not granting her a secret to make her feel special. He was doing something far more demanding. He was asking her to live awake. Human beings often imagine that if they knew the moment of their death, they would live in fear. But what Faustina discovered was the opposite. Knowing that her time was limited did not paralyze her, it clarified her. When time feels endless, repentance can wait. When tomorrow feels guaranteed, conversion can be postponed. But when a soul understands that its days are numbered, excuses collapse. Faustina realized that this revelation was not about when she would die, but about how she would live until then. Every day became intentional. Prayer was no longer routine. Obedience was no longer theoretical. Love was no longer delayed. God was teaching her something most souls never fully grasp. Urgency is a form of grace. The knowledge of death stripped away illusion. There was no space for spiritual procrastination, no comfort in half measures. If she was to complete the mission entrusted to her, she would have to give herself entirely, without waiting for a more convenient moment. In her spiritual diary, Faustina wrote with striking clarity about this transformation. Death, once feared, slowly lost its power over her. It no longer appeared as an enemy lurking in the shadows, but as a threshold, a passage permitted by God, not a defeat imposed by fate. The terror was not in dying. The terror was in failing to love fully before death arrived. This is why God sometimes allows certain souls to glimpse the fragility of their time, not to frighten them, but to free them, to release them from attachment to comfort, delay, and self-preservation. Faustina began to understand that mercy itself is urgent. Souls are lost not because God withholds grace, but because they postpone responding to it. I will change later. I will pray when life is calmer. I will surrender when I am ready. But readiness rarely comes without urgency. Knowing her life would be short forced Faustina to live now, not later, to forgive quickly, to obey immediately, to suffer without resentment, to love without calculation. Death, she realized, had already been defeated, not by avoiding it, but by offering it back to God in advance. This knowledge also brought her into deeper union with Christ. Jesus lived as if every moment mattered, because it did. His ministry was brief, his words measured,
his actions intentional. There was no wasted movement, no delayed obedience. Faustina began to mirror this rhythm. She no longer asked, "Why must I suffer?" She asked, "How can this suffering be offered?" She no longer feared the end. She feared wasting the time given before it. And this is where her revelation turns toward us. Most of us live as though time is abundant, as though conversion can wait, as though mercy will always be available tomorrow. But Faustina's life confronts us with an uncomfortable question. If you knew you would die soon, would you live differently today? Would you forgive faster? Would you pray more honestly? Would you stop clinging to sins you already know are destroying you? God does not reveal the hour of death to most souls, not because it lacks importance, but because we are rarely ready to receive such knowledge without fear. Yet Faustina's story offers us the fruit of her revelation without the burden of receiving it ourselves. She shows us what happens when a soul lives as though every day is a gift and every moment an offering. Death stopped being her enemy the moment she stopped running from it. And perhaps that is the mercy hidden within her story. Not that she knew when her life would end, but that she learned how to live before it did.
As the years passed, Faustina's body began to fail, slowly at first, then relentlessly. Tuberculosis took hold of her lungs, draining her strength breath by breath. Each task became heavier. Each step demanded more effort than the last. There were days when even speaking felt like a burden too great for her weakened body to carry. Pain became constant, not dramatic, not sudden, but persistent, a quiet companion that never left. Her nights were restless, her breathing shallow, her physical exhaustion profound. Yet, even as her body deteriorated, her responsibilities did not disappear. Obedience did not pause for illness. Suffering did not grant exemption. And worse still, she was not always believed. Within her own religious community, Faustina faced misunderstanding and suspicion. Some sisters questioned her experiences. Others doubted her sincerity. A few interpreted her illness as emotional weakness rather than physical reality. She was not persecuted loudly. She was diminished quietly. Her visions were scrutinized, her obedience tested, her silence often misread as instability. Faustina accepted these judgments without defense, submitting herself entirely to spiritual authority, even when doing so deepened her isolation. This interior suffering cut deeper than physical pain. To be misunderstood by the world is one thing. To be misunderstood by those who share your vocation is another. Yet Faustina did not grow bitter. As her body weakened, something else intensified. Her mercy. She began to perceive suffering not as an interruption of God's plan, but as its center. Each pain became an offering, each misunderstanding an opportunity to unite herself more fully with Christ. She no longer asked for relief, she asked for fidelity. In her prayer, Faustina entered more deeply into the passion of Jesus. She saw in her own weakening body an echo of his scourged flesh. In her breathlessness, she remembered his labored steps toward Calvary. In her abandonment, she recognized his loneliness in Gethsemane. The parallel was not poetic, it was lived. Jesus had been exhausted, yet continued, misunderstood, yet silent, condemned, yet obedient. Faustina followed the same path, not by imitation alone, but by participation. Her soul burned with love even as her body collapsed. The more she suffered, the more intensely she clung to divine mercy, not only for herself, but for sinners she would never meet, for souls she would never know by name. She offered her pain for priests, for the dying, for those furthest from God. In this final stage of her life, Faustina understood something few are given the grace to accept.
Suffering does not diminish love, it purifies it. Her prayers grew simpler, her trust deeper, her surrender more complete. She no longer feared death, not because it was painless, but because it was approaching as a fulfillment rather than an end. Like Christ, she continued to give even when she had little left to offer. Like Christ, her strength was gone before her mission was complete. And like Christ, her apparent defeat concealed a hidden victory. Those who observed her saw a sick nun fading into obscurity. Heaven saw a soul being consumed by love. The world measures life by productivity. God measures it by fidelity. Faustina's final years were not marked by achievement, recognition, or resolution. They were marked by endurance, by silent offering, by a love that grew stronger as everything else fell away. Her body was breaking, but her soul was burning. And just as Christ's passion did not end on the cross, Faustina's suffering was preparing the ground for something that would only be revealed after her death. For the silence that surrounded her final days was not absence, it was anticipation.
Saint Faustina did not die surrounded by signs. There was no sudden healing, no voice from heaven, no light filling the room. Her death came quietly, almost unnoticed. At the age of 33, her weakened body finally surrendered. Tuberculosis had consumed what little strength remained. Breathing was difficult, pain was familiar, and yet there was no outward drama to mark the end of her life. To the world, it was an unremarkable passing, a young nun, poor, ill, hidden. Those around her saw no miracle, no visible confirmation that her suffering had meaning. Heaven, it seemed, was silent. But that silence was not absence, it was completion. Like Christ on the cross, Faustina's final moments were stripped of consolation. There was no triumph felt, no visible victory claimed, only obedience carried to the end. She died as she had lived, unseen. No one proclaimed her holiness that day. No crowds gathered. No history books paused to take note. Her mission appeared unfinished, her suffering unresolved, and yet something had been sealed. God often completes his greatest works not with noise, but with stillness. Jesus died at 33 in apparent failure, mocked, abandoned, silent. Only later would the world understand what had truly taken place. So it was with Faustina. Her death did not announce her importance, it concealed it. For heaven does not rush to explain itself. In the days and years that followed, what Faustina had lived and written in obscurity began to emerge. Her diary, once doubted, questioned, even restricted, started to travel far beyond the walls of her convent. The message she had carried in suffering was now carried across nations. Divine mercy spread where she never walked. Hearts were changed by words she had written in pain. Sinners encountered hope through a life that had ended too soon. The silence of her death gave way to the voice of mercy. What had seemed small proved immense. What had seemed hidden proved universal. This is how God works. He allows his saints to die before their work appears complete, so that it may be clear the work was never theirs to begin with. Faustina did not build a movement. She did not witness the fruits of her obedience. She did not see the world respond. She simply surrendered. And after her death, God acted. Mercy reached places Faustina could not. Grace flowed where her body never went. Hope rose from suffering the world had overlooked. Her life ended in silence, but her mission did not end at all. It began. This is the mystery of sanctity. God often hides the victory until the servant is gone.
so that no one mistakes grace for talent, so that no one confuses mercy with strategy. Saint Faustina's death at 33 was not the end of her story. It was the moment heaven began to speak.
The parallel between Saint Faustina and Jesus Christ was never meant to elevate her to his level. She was not Christ. She was not a redeemer. She did not save the world by her own sacrifice. The meaning of the shared number lies elsewhere, in the mystery of the cross. To share the age of Christ's death was not a sign of equality, it was a sign of participation, a participation in the logic of salvation, where love is proven not by length of life, but by the depth of surrender. Jesus offered his life completely at 33, not because his time was cut short, but because his mission was fulfilled. Faustina's life followed the same pattern. Her years were not taken from her, they were given, fully, intensely, and without reserve. God sometimes invites certain souls to share in the cross, not through public martyrdom, but through hidden obedience, misunderstood suffering, and silent endurance. This kind of participation does not draw attention, but it carries eternal weight. Faustina's suffering did not add to Christ's sacrifice, it joined it. Her illness, her loneliness, her obedience, her silence, all of it became an offering placed within the redemptive work already accomplished by Christ. In this way, her life became a channel through which mercy flowed. This is the hidden meaning of the parallel. Not resemblance, but union. And this mystery is not reserved for saints alone. Every person has a number. Not a date written on a calendar, but a measure known only to God, a span of time entrusted to us, not owned by us. Some are given many years, others far fewer. But the question heaven asks is always the same. What did you do with the time you were given? Did you spend it protecting yourself or offering yourself? Did you delay love or choose it when it cost something? Did you cling to comfort or carry the cross placed before you? Faustina did not choose her number. She chose her response. She used her time, short as it was, to surrender completely. And in doing so, she reminds us that holiness is not achieved by extraordinary deeds, but by ordinary faithfulness lived without delay. Her life stands as a quiet challenge to ours. We may never receive visions, we may never know the length of our days, but we do know this: time is not infinite, and grace is never meant to be postponed. The parallel between Faustina and Christ is not meant to be admired from a distance, it is meant to be answered. Answered in how we pray, in how we suffer, in how we love. Because in the end, the question will not be how long we lived, but how fully we lived within the time God entrusted to us.
Saint Faustina did not live a long life. She did not reach old age. She did not see the fruits of her obedience. She did not watch the world respond to the message she carried in silence. Her years were few, but they were full. In a world obsessed with length, long careers, long plans, long futures, Faustina's life confronts us with a different measure, a measure heaven has always used, even when the world forgets it. God does not count years, He counts surrender. Faustina surrendered her health, her reputation, her desire to be understood. She surrendered the comfort of anonymity and the safety of invisibility. She surrendered the future she might have imagined and accepted the one God revealed, even when it frightened her. She did not live fast, she lived deep.
Her life reminds us that holiness is not about how much time we are given, but how completely we give ourselves within that time. Jesus lived 33 years. Faustina lived 33 years. Both lives were hidden. Both were misunderstood. Both were consumed by love. And both reveal a truth that unsettles us, that eternity is often shaped in a very short span of time. Most of us live as though tomorrow is guaranteed, as though repentance can wait, as though surrender can be postponed until life becomes quieter, easier, more convenient. Faustina's story dismantles that illusion. She shows us that waiting is often the enemy of grace, not because God is impatient, but because love asks for everything now. Her life whispers a question into our own. What are we delaying that God has already asked of us? Forgiveness? Confession? Trust? Obedience? Faustina did not have the luxury of delay, and perhaps that is why her life burns so brightly even now. Before you leave, pause just for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, if you knew your life was short, what would you change today? Would you love more freely, let go more quickly, stop clinging to what you already know is not leading you to God? Write your answer in the comments, not for the algorithm, but as an act of truth. Your reflection may be the grace someone else needs to begin again. And if stories like this move your soul, if hidden lives, silent suffering, and eternal truths speak to something deep within you, then I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe for more hidden stories of saints that reveal eternal truths. Because some stories are not meant to entertain, they are meant to awaken. And Saint Faustina's life, short, hidden, surrendered, still speaks, if we are willing to listen.